Folks, today I'm going to be talking about team dynamics, in particular, the difference between high performers and low performers and how to balance things out. Because if you are a leader, just like every other leader, you know that there are some people on your team that are high performers, and then there are some people on your team that are not great performers or average performers or completely, let's just say, not performing at all. Hopefully, you're in a situation where you have some high performers. I know a lot of people that just don't have any high performers, and that becomes even bigger struggle for them. But I'm going to be talking about the dynamics of when you have high performers on a team and you have low performers on a team, because there's an interesting dynamic there. The thing to understand is that every team has different levels of performance within individuals. So some individuals are high performing, some are average, and it's up to you as a leader to determine who is in what category, who fits in what category, based not only on their current situation, but their long-term potential. That's the first thing, right? You have to be able to identify that. And that takes a little bit of work, and it does require you to have some understanding of this area of performance. But I'm going to give you some things to look out for as well. But this is important because when you have individuals who are super high performers, they can carry the load for the low performers. And this is very, very common. Let's just say you have a sales team, you have some really great people, you have a sales team of 10, and you have two top performers, and let's just say you have 5 average people and 3 underperformers. So what you have is you have the top people carrying, those 2 people carrying the underperformers. And this is natural in a group dynamic. Whenever you have more people in a group, you will have this. It's a natural tendency for people that are low performers to continue to stay as low performers based on their mindset and their mentality. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with these individuals, because people react differently in different environments. That's the first thing I want you to understand, is that people's performance is also dependent on their environment. Yes, some individuals are more consistent across different types of environments, but they have to be trained in performance. In the work that we do, for example, we train people how to be high performers in multiple different areas and spectrums, not just in one particular area. So we can teach a sales professional how to be exceptionally well if that person goes into marketing or operations or innovation or whatever, or strategy or some other aspect of the business, even though they're not really great or have in-depth proficiency in that area. But coming back to this point here, some people just don't perform well in a specific environment. So pay attention to that. You want to take a look and see if perhaps putting this person in a different environment is going to help. Okay, that's something to pay attention to. Now, as I said before, when you have a larger group of people, the people that are the stars will tend to shine, and the people that are not high performers will tend to just stay in the corner, and they are being propped up by the high performers. And that poses a significant challenge, because you're not getting the full potential out of the entire team. And that is the biggest thing that people miss out on, is if you have a number of people that are operating 3 out of 10 and a number of people who are operating a 10 out of 10, what would happen if you took those 3 out of 10 and bumped them up to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or even a 10 out of 10? The performance for the overall team would be staggering. And this is a misconception that a lot of people have in business, is that, and I've heard this from leaders, hey, let's just invest more in our top performers and let's not worry about our lower performers. That's not the case. That's not what you want. And how do I know this? Well, take a look at some of the best performing teams there. Take a look at Olympics. Do you think Olympic teams, they say, hey, look, these people suck in their category, whatever it is. We're not going to pay attention to them. We're just going to focus on our stars. No, everybody that goes to Olympics is one of the best in their categories. That's the whole point of the Olympics. You want a team that can go to the Olympics. And in order for you to do that, you have to have people at a certain threshold. And when the group gets too large and you allow people to compensate for other people, that's a challenge, and it takes away from the team being at the Olympic level. Okay, so I know I'm kind of going about this in a roundabout way, but I really want you to understand this. And you might be thinking, well, hey, Pradeep, I only have a team of 5 people. Like, what does that mean? That's not a very big team at all. Well, even within 5 people, are you paying attention and making sure that when those 5 people are showing up together as a team, that they're all pulling their weight? That's the most important thing to pay attention to. And what I do, I'll give you something that I do when I work with organizations, and when we take people through specific types of programs and we do it in a group setting, I would prefer to take 10 people. Let's just say we're working with an executive team. And there's 10 people on the executive team. I will actually split that executive team up into 2 teams of 5. And the reason why is, let's just say we're having a call, we're having a training session or a workshop. If one person doesn't show up out of the 10 people, let's just say if I brought this team together and we were doing a session for all 10 people, and one of those people doesn't show up, then what ends up happening is that everybody's like, oh, that's okay. We still have 9 people on the call. And the group dynamic, you can tell when one person is gone, it's not that bad. But if I have 2 teams of 5 and I'm doing an independent session for each, and 1 out of 5 people doesn't show up, the group starts to notice that. Okay, they start to notice that and they're like, oh, this person didn't show up. So there's automatically a higher level of awareness and a higher level of accountability. That's what happens when you actually pay attention based on a smaller group size. And you got to bring this to people's attention. So high performers, depending on the type of performer as well, because on a sales team, you might have a team, but they're actually individual contributors, meaning that if your bonus structure for everybody, for example, is not based on team results, it's based on individual results, then they're individual contributors. However, if their bonus is based on perhaps individual results and team results, for example, the entire team needs to hit a certain sales target for a certain percentage of bonus to be paid out, which is very effective, by the way, then they are more likely to actually act as a team as well. And this is important because if there are individual contributors on a team, for example, the sales team, and there's no shared bonus, then the top performers have no incentive to bring the low performers up. Okay, they have no incentive to mentor, to coach, to train, because they may even see the low performers as people dragging them down. So when you take a look at your compensation structure, take a look at that. That could be a factor, or your team culture. And so high performers will continue to be high performers unless there's some kind of incentive for them to bring the low performers up, or they are naturally inclined to be mentors and bring other people up. And there are people like that out there, but they're very few. Okay, so don't count on everybody doing that. So that's the one thing. And the other thing to pay attention to as well is what happens to your team when the high performers are not there, because that happens. Let's just say your high performers are sick, or they're on vacation, or something happens, right? They're just not around, they're not able to, or they're super busy with specific type of projects and you can't put them on other projects. Do things fall apart? Or do things significantly slow down? Or do you get worried? If the answer is yes, then you need to take a look and focus on everybody else on your team as well. And you cannot wait for your high performers to prop the rest of the team up, because that's a risk. That's a significant risk to the overall team. And depending on how important this team is, a risk to the overall business. So what ends up happening is, interesting enough, when you have more people at the high performing level, you may actually see other people's performance either stay the same or drop, depending on that person's personality type as well. So those individuals, when they see other people performing, some individuals have the tendency to say, that person's excelling, I want to excel as well. So they're going to naturally try to grow as a result of that. Other people are like, that person's excelling, that's okay, I'm just going to stay the same. And then there's a number of people out there that get defeated when other people are excelling because they don't have that self-efficacy, they don't have that self-belief system. And so instead of that being a motivator, it's actually a detractor or demotivator. And what happens is they perform worse. They actually get worse. And those are the individuals that you have to watch out for. But again, there's a reason why I say people perform differently in different environments. So is there something about the environment that is causing those low performers to get even worse or stay at the low performance levels? So that's something to pay attention to. Another factor here when it comes to team dynamics and performance is what happens when you have high performers and potentially, for example, they get the recognition, they're the ones that get the awards, they're the ones that are getting the top clients or the top bonuses, whatever that looks like. They can actually stifle the potential of other people. So other people may not get the recognition. They may not get the rewards. But here's the most important thing. It's potential. It's not where they are currently. It's their opportunity of where they can get to. So if the high performers are getting all the attention, or, that's kind of an extreme. It's not always all the attention. Let's just say there's a significant amount of attention put on these high performers or resources or whatever that looks like, right? Even morale, right, can be centered around high performers. And they're the people that people gravitate towards, right? They're let's just say on the sales team, they're like, yeah, that person's a top salesperson. And there's how do I say this? It's in the grapevine, right? So you can tell when people are being admired for their performance. And what ends up happening is that can stifle the potential of other people because there's a fear factor, right? There's an automatic comparison that can be unhealthy for other people when they're looking at these awesome performers and they're like, maybe I can't get there. Maybe I just don't have the potential. Maybe I just don't have the skills. And there's this automatic imposter syndrome. So having high performers on a team can actually stifle potential if you're not careful. Now, I'm sharing all of these signs with you so you can actually address them, because having high performers on your team is an awesome thing. It's not a holdback. It's not something that you should be worried about, but paying attention to the overall culture is very, very important. And then one of the other things to take a look at is where you spend your time and energy. I'm coming back to this point here, is a lot of leaders tend to spend their time and energy with the people that are high performers. And they tend to ignore and they tend to even avoid the individuals that are low performers, because sometimes these low performers can drain your energy. And let's be honest, they can absolutely drain your energy, and you have to conserve your energy. And there's some people out there that just are energy drainers. And there's a correlation between people who are low performers and energy drainers. It's interesting to see that correlation, right? Typically, when people are not performing, they're the ones that are, perhaps they just don't have the right attitude, or perhaps they don't have the skill set and you've trained them over and over again and they still can't pick up on things. But it's taking a lot of your energy trying to get these people up and running into that high performance level. Now, one of the things to pay attention to is that energy that you're putting in. I think this is very, very important. Is unless you're trained in this area of performance, yes, you can teach them technical skills. Yes, you can teach them some areas of motivation and inspiration and soft skills or emotional skills or leadership skills. But if you're not equipped to teach someone high performance, you can spend a lot of time and energy in that space, and their performance is not going to improve that well, because performance is a skill set. It's a program. You have to understand how humans work and how performance works. So if you're not the expert, trying to put all this time and energy into helping someone improve their performance is not going to get the results. And then you're going to look at them and say, well, I put all this time and energy in, and it's the person. That's not necessarily the case. Very, very important for you to pay attention to. I would write this down, because just like, for example, if you take a look at someone who has or is dyslexic or maybe has autism, I'm not saying your low performers are like that, but studies have shown that if you try to teach them in the normal ways, some of these people that have these kinds of challenges or conditions pick up on the skills, and many of them do not. So you have to teach them differently. The same goes for people that are low performers. It's not the fact that they're slow or they have a condition. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is sometimes they need a different approach to performance, to understanding what performance is. And fundamentally, performance is like a specialty. It's a difference between going to a cardiologist and a GP. If you have some concern with your heart, you might touch base with your GP, but if you're smart, you want to touch base with your cardiologist, because they're the experts in that particular area. So your GP can throw you around in a number of different circles, unless you have a really, really good one. And they might say, oh, it just could be a muscle ache. It could be this. It could be that. And you could spend a whole bunch of time, energy, and wasted resources not getting to the root cause of what your heart condition is or the challenge or whatever it might be, rather than just going to a cardiologist and saying, hey, look, can you help me? And they can pinpoint it very fast. So this is the difference. Trying to teach performance, I'm saying this very honestly, it is a specific skill set that needs to be trained to them. No one teaches us, no one trains us throughout school, throughout the workplace. It's very, very, I'm going to say slim for any organization to teach and train and coach on performance, what those aspects are. So that's the last point there, is just because you're putting time and energy in doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with that person. It just means perhaps the approach isn't very effective. So this is very, very important, because team dynamics, if I'm going to summarize here, team dynamics is one of the biggest challenges that we see right now, not only from a performance standpoint, but also from a perspective of causing burnout. Because when there is a dysfunctional, or let's say team that is not performing at their optimal potential, there is a chance, or a greater chance, for individuals on that team to burn out. So this is what we see, especially when there's dysfunction within the team, that's directly related to burnout. So if you want your, obviously, performance to go up, that's obviously, all of us want that, right? We want our teams to be performing at their optimal level. Then you have to understand that you got to bring those low performers up to a certain threshold and bring those average performers up even better. And that requires specific performance training and an approach. And I've given you some things to watch out for, because don't fall into that typical trap of having high performers and leaning on those high performers and depending on those high performers and believing that that's going to carry your team long term. It's not going to happen. Something may fall apart, but I've given you some tools, some things to watch out for, so you can actually address those issues and turn everybody on your team and get them to that Olympic level. So hopefully this adds value to you. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave a comment or reach out. More than happy to give you any insight I can. All the best.